now. Thank you, Anna. So we are very, very happy to welcome everyone to our online event, Youth on the Move, Making Green Urban Mobility Accessible to All, organized by Generation Climate Europe in partnership with the European Economic and Social Committee, represented here by Lydia. We will be discussing issues related to urban and suburban mobility for young people in European cities. And the format of the event is as follows. First, we will start with our two keynote speakers, and then a short overview of the key findings of our brand new study that GC has published just last week that you've probably seen. And then we will start our panel discussion, and thank you to all our panelists for joining us for this. So to introduce ourselves, I'm Morgan. I'm the project lead of the Clean Mobility Working Group of Generation Climate Europe, and I will be moderating this event. Also with us today from GC are Gemma, Ruben, Amini, Anna, and Antoine from our Clean Mobility team. Thank you all for being here. And we will also be super interested in knowing the people who have joined us today. So please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know especially what city or town you're joining from, as well as your organization if relevant. And please feel free to ask questions on the chat during the event, especially during the panel discussion. And I will then transfer the questions to our speaker. So to get started, we'd like to introduce our two keynote speakers, which we are very happy to welcome. Please welcome them with me. First of all, Mrs. Lidia Pavic-Rogocic. She is a member of the European Economic and Social Committee, which you can see from her background. And she's also the director of the Croatian civil society organization called Sustainable Community Development, ODRAS. Lydia has experience in the areas of sustainable, local, and rural development, and as well as local community projects. Thank you very much for being here, Lydia. Our second keynote speaker is Sara Tagliabracci. She is the Global Mobility Coordinator at the Erasmus Student Network, ESN, which is one of the biggest student associations in Europe, as well as a member of Generation Climate Europe. Sarah does advocacy for ESN at the international level, promoting the international dimension of the Erasmus Plus program, which all of us probably know as recent graduates or current students. Then our four panel speakers are the following. First of all, Minister Elke van den Brandt. She's been the Minister of Mobility, Public Works and Road Safety within the Brussels Capital Region government since 2019. She is a member of the Green Party and is committed to road safety, cleaner and a fairer distribution of public space. Representing the city of Groningen is Mr. Philip Broeskma, Vice Mayor for Traffic and Transport in the city of Groningen in the Netherlands. He has experience with sustainable energy, traffic and transport, as well as IT, public services and green logistics. Joining us from Lisbon is Luis Vieira, who's project manager at Bicicultura, a non-profit cooperative based in Lisbon, Portugal. And this cooperative works on promoting bicycles for all types of users. Luis' background is in civil engineering. He is a civil engineering consultant and currently managing Lisbon's municipal bike train program. Thank you for joining us, Luis. And last but not least, Juan Caballero is working for Eurocities, which is the largest network of European cities with members in over 200 large cities. In terms of his work, he's the campaign manager of the European Mobility Week, which is the European Commission's flagship awareness-raising campaign on sustainable urban mobility. And you've probably seen this happen last week. So well done for this. And thank you very, very much for joining us. Thank you all for joining us today. And we are very glad to welcome our audience as well. Without further ado, I'll give the floor to Mrs. Pavic-Rogocic, and she will deliver a 10-minute keynote speech. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Morgana. Good afternoon to all. I would like to thank you on behalf of European Economic and Social Committee for the invitation to organize this event, and also to introduce some of our views regarding sustainable urban mobility with an emphasis on the needs of young people. I read carefully and I congratulate you on your study, which provides insight into the habits and needs of young people in the field of mobility, but also provides important recommendations. As an advisory body for the Parliament, the Commission and the Council, which get as representatives of civil society, the ESC prepares opinions related to proposals of those EU bodies, but also we prepare our own initiative opinions. And one of them is the importance of public transport for the Europe Green Recovery, in which we call for mobility to be recognized as an individual right, as a public good that has to be available to everyone, since it guarantees access to economic, social, and cultural life. Providing sufficiently staffed, accessible, affordable, safe, quality public transport services for everyone must be a priority objective for the EU. This ESC draws also attention to the fact that achieving sustainable mobility needs strong political commitment from all actors and all levels. Local public and government authorities have to understand that keeping public transport functioning is part of their duty to serve communities. On the other hand, raising awareness about the environmental impact of transport and personal mobility choices is also important in promoting the shift to public and sustainable transport. Many citizens, especially younger people, are ready to change their consumption and mobility patterns when empowered by relevant information in order to limit their carbon footprint and to live in a greener, healthier environment. Making these modes more attractive to everyone will contribute to the shift towards greener and more sustainable modes of transport. Of course, the public authorities have to provide infrastructure. You probably are aware of EU documents. I will just mention some, like sustainable and smart mobility strategy, urban mobility framework, but also long-term vision for rural areas, as you rightly stated in your study. Connection between urban, peri-urban, and rural areas is really very important. So one of the questions is, why is mobility so important? Mobility is crucial for several reasons. Flexibility. Mobility allows individuals to move freely and adapt to different environments and situations. This flexibility is essential for maintaining independence and quality of life. Mobility empowers individuals to take care of themselves, manage daily tasks, and make choices about how they live their lives. Social connections are important because mobility enables individuals to participate in social activity, engage with others, and maintain relationships. Mobility is also essential for accessing education, employment, and economic opportunities. Being able to travel to different locations open up a world of possibilities for personal and professional growth. And not to forget health and well-being. Regular physical mobility, such as walking and cycling, is essential for maintaining good health and well-being. So overall, mobility plays a vital role in all aspects of life. And as mentioned before, it is important to emphasize mobility as a public good from the aspect of affordability, inclusiveness, accessibility for everyone, especially for vulnerable groups. So why should we need to take into account young people in urban policies? Incorporating young people into urban policies is crucial for the sustainable development and well-being of cities. Young people represent the future of urban communities, and their needs, perspectives, and contributions are essential for creating inclusive, vibrant, and resilient cities. Here are some reasons why it is important to consider young people in the urban policies. First, youth representation. Young people make up a significant portion of the population in many cities, and their voices deserve to be heard in decision-making processes that directly impact their lives. Innovation and creativity. Young people are often at the forefront of innovation and bring fresh ideas and creativity to urban development, including them in policy discussions, can lead to new solutions and approaches to address urban challenges. Social inclusion, I already mentioned something about that. Many young people face social exclusion, discrimination, and lack of opportunities in cities, but also in rural areas. By designing policies that cater their needs, cities can promote social inclusion and create a more equitable environment for the residents. And of course, youth well-being. Urban policies that consider the needs of young people can have a positive impact on their overall well-being, including access to education, employment, healthcare, recreational spaces, and social service. And of course, we have challenges. Some of challenges are common, and as well as opportunities for EU cities in that regard. And one of the common challenges, I would say, that EU cities face is engaging young people in urban policies, includes lack of participation, actually. Young people may feel disconnected from traditional political processes and may not be adequately represented in decision-making bodies. So on the other hand, there are also opportunities for EU cities to better engage with young people in urban policies, including youth councils and advisory boards, which can be a platform for young people to contribute to their ideas and perspectives to urban policy development. Second, we have a lot of youth-led initiatives and projects, and supporting and funding such initiatives help empower young people to take an active role in shaping their cities. And finally, digital and tech innovation, leveraging digital technologies and innovation can help cities better reach and engage with young people, as they are often early adopters of new technologies. So by considering the needs and perspectives of young people in urban policies, EU cities can build more inclusive, sustainable, and thriving communities for all residents. So what are the youth needs in regards to effective mobility and public transport? As you see, I'm not so young anymore, so I use opportunity to ask my young colleagues in my organization. You already mentioned I'm from Croatia, and the organization is ODRA, Sustainable Community Development, but we are also a Secretariat for Sustainable Urban Mobility Network, CIVENET, Slovenia, Croatia, and Southeast Europe, and that's what they mentioned, that it's important. So quality service, accurate, reliable, comfortable, easy to use. There is an integrated map and application that unites all methods of transport with clear and timely information, punctual timetable, state-of-the-art fleet, and subsidies and benefits, reduced price for young people and students. You also cover that in your study. And there are already a lot of good examples from bigger cities, like you mentioned Lisbon, and one of my colleagues is really impressed with the application for public transport in Budapest, which is intuitive and easy to use. It includes all modes of transport, timely information, etc. But there are also some small towns like Werfenweg, which is Alpine town, and very good developed public transport. And young people there less and less decide to buy their own cars. There are also some other good examples. And just two more observations. Active in regards to active modes like cycling, what youth needs is networks, not just kilometers of trails, but it should be connected in networks, and it should be safe. And I will finish with something that is also dear to me, because I work in rural development as well, and that's a good connection with suburban and rural areas, not to leave those areas or people, including youth, there behind. So that would be my intervention. If you have some questions, I'm here to answer. Thank you very much once again, and successful event.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Pavic-Rogocic, for your speech, and also reminding us that the ESC recognized mobility as an individual right, as you said at the beginning. Thank you as well for reminding us that peri-urban and rural mobility are key to fighting social exclusion, and it's the importance of cohesion of different territories within the EU and within member states. And you're right, there are already many good practices out there, including in the cities that are covered by our research, and that we should all inspire ourselves from them. So thank you very much for your great speech, and I will give the floor to Sara Tagliabracci, who will also deliver a speech and responding to the question, what makes day-to-day mobility crucial for young people? Thank you so much, Sara, for joining us. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Hope you hear me well. I'm Sara. I'm currently based in Brussels, but I'm from a very, very tiny, small village in Italy. And actually, as we were talking about mobility out there, is not very well connected with other cities. So actually, this topic touches me a lot, especially concerning that I did plenty of mobilities. For now, I collected more than 4 mobilities abroad. So also was not very easy to travel. So first of all, thank you so much for this invitation. I'm very happy that we got this invitation, and thank you, Morgan. What I wanted to reply concerning this question is, of course, to bring a bit the ESN perspective on this. I don't know if you know, but the Erasmus Plus program guide was now released with some different features concerning the travel support we want to give to international students. So first of all, I wanted to say that ESN is very pleased that the Commission released and changed made some significant changes in the Erasmus Plus program guide for 2024, and we're confident that there might be new changes, also like new positive changes. But of course, we always have some issues concerning like the rate of students who go mobility, and especially who go and to do a green mobility abroad. As you may know, ESN carries out one of the biggest surveys. It's called the ESN survey, which collected more than 23,000 answers for now, and we are currently in the moment of analyzing the survey. And we realized that unfortunately only 10% of the participants only received the green travel. This actually matches also some other results we got, and actually the 73% of the participants are the people who choose the flight and the plane as their preferred option. And however, for overnight trips during the mobility, they like still buses, for example, and trains, which for example also matches a lot what I did during my mobility, because I think it's a very like current way that international students use. And when comparing, for example, still to some data we got from past surveys, the 73% still stays the one of the plane. So there are still some changes to make. And what we actually realized that, yes, of course, 50 euro, it's not like it's okay, but it's not totally fine to make a mobility abroad, especially to a green one. So actually what we decided to do was to do a petition, thanks to a project that we called Green Erasmus Project. We collected more than 5,000 answers from people from over 100 countries, and we presented like a petition about the increase of the current top-up grant to an universal top-up grant for individual support up to 250 euro for green travel. And of course, we appreciate a lot the new changes in the program guide, but we still think that 50 euro is not enough to carry a mobility abroad, especially a green one. And what we also welcome, and we are pleased that the increase in the sustenance cost from the travel time to 4 to 6 days. We actually think that if a person wants to travel abroad in a green way, or maybe like with train or with bus, of course, having 6 days more, it's much better. And also what we think is that we would like to facilitate more this green transition of the of the program. We realized we prepared some recommendations for this, and we think that the increased travel support should be executed also in a way that tries to avoid the disparities between the students and whose mobilities will be funded with resources from previous calls. So also that there should be much more transparency in between, like the giving the support to the students, and especially higher education institutions should maintain this flexibility in this process. And also still concerning the travel support, this should be awarded to the students without imposing heavy burdens concerning the administrative requirements, because as we know, bureaucracy is also a big issue for international students. So imagine putting together the two big issues, green travel and bureaucracy, it will be very, very messy. So actually one of our recommendations to try to make the process much more smoother. And also we think that the students should also like be more actively encouraged to prioritize travel sustainably, especially not only from higher education institutions, but also a bit more bottom up, also so from students' organization. And as Lydia was saying before, also students should be part of the decision-making process concerning this topic. ESN also published some joint calls with Erasmus Plus tickets, and also during one of the next events we'll have in Seville. It's called the Erasmus Generation Meeting. We will release one of dedicated Erasmus Plus train ticket. So we will make sure also that you will gather this, you will have more information concerning this news. So we think that if the students get a discount on a mobility ticket, on a train mobility ticket, for sure they might consider the idea of traveling much more sustainably. And also we think that with the also discussion with the multi-annual financial framework that are around the corner, we want to continue our advocacy efforts to increase the funding for Erasmus Plus program. We think that more inclusivity, more accessibility, and more money, it's very important for also for especially for this cause, for the cause of traveling in a much more sustainable way. And yes, this is more the side from the ESN side. For my side, concerning the question, yes, I totally agree with what as ESN we stand for. So I still think also in between my students organization and between when I travel, mostly I don't see, like I see a lot of proactiveness from the student side to travel also more sustainably, but unfortunately if they don't have the enough tools to travel sustainably, or if of course the means of transport do not always like work, as for example, it comes from my small city, of course, the students will be disincentivized to travel much more green. So with this keynote speech, I would like to address much more this topic and to try to make and I hope that you will discuss more about this topic, because we think that it's really, really important. So thank you so much for this time.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for your speech and for bringing the perspective of international students. It's right that when you also arrive to your destination as an Erasmus student, it's important that this bureaucratic burden that you were talking about is relieved, to make sure that also students on the spot have access to all the benefits that they can in terms of also local and regional travel, and that they don't go for the private car option. So thank you very much for your speech, and thanks for joining us. Before we move on, I would also like to give you a short overview of who we are, Generation Climate Europe. For those who don't know, we're the largest coalition of youth-led networks advocating for environmental and climate action at the EU level. Our members include Youth and Environment Europe, the Erasmus Student Network, who Sarah was representing, and the European Student Union. We have branches of these national organizations in 46 different countries in Europe, including all EU member states, of course, which is really crucial for us as we aim to represent young people from all over Europe. We have different working groups today with the Clean Mobility Working Group, as you'd expect, but our other working groups also cover really important topics for young people and also older people, including energy and climate justice, biodiversity, intergenerational justice, and the new economy and new economic thinking. As the majority of young people in Europe live in urban and suburban areas, as Lydia mentioned, many face the perils of air and noise pollution, but along with the public health benefits of access to clean mobility, affordable public transport systems are really key to unlocking equal opportunities and creating better long-term social outcomes for young people. As Lydia also mentioned, they allow us better access to key resources such as space of work and education, health, culture, and this is especially important for suburban youth and social inclusion. From a climate perspective, obviously it's urgent to decarbonize transport at all levels. Sarah also mentioned the international level. For a little bit of global context on this, the transport sector currently emits a third of the EU's greenhouse gas emissions and is actually the only sector whose emissions are still on the rise in the region to this day. So clean urban and suburban mobility is really central to making our cities more livable while addressing, of course, the climate crisis and social justice considerations, social inclusion, and equal economic opportunity for all Europeans of all regions. Young people, I must remind you all, will be at the forefront of climate degradation in the coming decades. And today as well, they need reliable, efficient, and emission-free mobility for an acceptable transition in all EU regions. So without further ado, I will give the floor to Gemma, who will present the report's findings in 10 EU cities that are aiming to be climate neutral by 2030. Over to you, Gemma.
Thank you, Morgan. So I'm just going to cover briefly what our report found. So the basis of our report was on 112 European cities who are all participating in the mission to achieve climate neutrality by 2030. And as Morgan was saying, transportation is proving very difficult to decarbonize. So this is central to cities' plans. Young people are, of course, one of the main demographics using public transport. As Lydia was saying, they represent the future of cities. Yet the research on their habits is remained limited. So our report is based on a year of study examining the mobility behaviours and challenges faced by young people across 10 diverse EU cities, providing policy recommendations tailored to individual cities, but also lessons that can be applied universally. And the 10 European cities we chose were based on representing a range of urban settings across different geographical areas across the whole of Europe, and which have a high proportion of young people living in them. So these are Brussels, Budapest, Cluj-Napoca, Dublin, Groningen, Krakow, Lisbon, Lyon, and Thessaloniki. So in the summer of last year, GCE published a survey and gathered input from 491 young people who are living in those cities. And the data we collected from this tells us their mobility habits, their satisfaction with the different modes of transport, including the reach and the price. Then, in addition to that survey, we also did additional analysis on the price and reach of journeys, including journeys from 25 kilometres outside of the city centre to understand the situation of young people living in the suburbs. So as you can see from the slide, our key findings were that satisfaction varies, but there are many lessons in what some cities do well and others need to improve. So there's lots of opportunities to learn from each other in that way. Interoperability is something which kept coming up as a reason why people preferred cars. So especially people living in the suburbs, it's much easier to get somewhere with cars when the different modes of transport do not connect to each other price-wise or timetable-wise. Which links to one of our main findings that, yes, the urban-suburban divide poses a real challenge for city transport. Also, pricing varies significantly. Many cities offer some form of discount, but this is often limited to within the city centre, so it's further increasing that divide between suburban and rural areas, and it's also sometimes has very specific eligibility criteria. So the overall recommendations coming from this are that we need to be investing in multiple modes of transport which can work together and which can solve this interoperability issue, which is one of the main reasons why people choose cars over public transport. We also need to tackle the divide between suburbs and city centre, in which many young people are living. And we need to encourage the use of public transport through pricing strategies that include more universal discount criteria and consider those in rural areas. So that's a very quick summary of our report, but please check it out because you can see all of our quantitative data on each city, our methodology, and also some interviews with different young people from the different cities, which are really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gemma, for the presentation. And I do invite everyone to have a look at the report. The link is in the chat. And please feel free to send your thoughts on our findings in these 10 cities. And now I'm really excited to welcome our panel members who will be discussing 3 key topics from our report: walking and cycling, as well as safety, and then the urban and suburban and rural divides, also the different reach of public transport. And last but not least, the pricing of urban and suburban transport. I will kindly ask you to keep your responses under 3 minutes. So first of all, walking and cycling, Juan, I will go to you first. So the European Mobility Week Awards took place very recently, and I would like to ask you, what have you seen cities do well over the years for youth mobility, in particular concerning walking and cycling?
Yes, thanks, Morgan, for the question. As you said, a couple of weeks ago, we announced the city that did the best last year in September for the European Mobility Week campaign. It was the city of Budapest. I was also happy to see that it's one of the cities in your study. Actually, one of the reasons why they won the award is for the safety measures that they implemented last year to enhance and to encourage people to cycle, not only young people, but everyone in the city, and also for the ambitious plan that the city of Budapest has to providing more space for people to walk, and as I said, cycling safely. But also from the European Mobility Week campaign, we have been working with young people in the past, in the previous editions. In every edition, every September, it's one important part of the development of the program of activities. But in 2019, if my memory is not wrong, we focused only on walking and cycling. That was one of the topics of the European Mobility Week campaign. And I think it was 1 year after, a couple of years after, during the summer, we organized a specific webinar with I see some familiar faces, so some of you, to see how we can do during this campaign in September, but during the whole year, how we can ensure that walking and cycling is attractive and is safe, of course, as it's written in the title of this first round. And there were some conclusions, but I won't go to all of them because we are quite limited. I can keep some of the conclusions for later on, but one of those was that when developing activities to promote walking and cycling, or implementing measures that promote or ensure safe walking and cycling, we have to take into account the needs of young people and every different group in society, but not only for the sake of having them on board, but just because there is a real interest. I mean, there is also a risk of greenwashing, or let's call it young washing. So we also have to avoid this when developing these activities and these programs. And this is something that we have in the guidelines as the European Secretariat for the European Mobility Week campaign, that we have for the more than 3,000 towns and cities that organize the campaign every year in September. And this year again will be on the topic of shared public spaces. So more than any before, any other edition, having an honest discussion and an open discussion with the young people and with everyone in society sharing the public space. We will have to do these guidelines and provide this ground for the debate and how to better use the public space. I tried to be short, but yeah, I think we have more time to discuss more later on.
We'll have lots of time. Thank you, Juan, for opening the discussion and mentioning safety as well. Over to you, Luis. You probably have a lot to say about cycling. Can you first tell us about your organization, Bicicultura? We can hear that it's about cycling and the project that you're currently working on. And what would you request from policymakers in your city to make your work easier on cycling?
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It's delightful to be here talking to you. So we are a not-for-profit cooperative organization, but in essence, it's our jobs of the people that work with a bit of a different mindset of a company, very focused on mission, but also on making things sustainably and with a worthy agenda. We have been focused a lot on cycling, but actually have decided to expand our scope to walking and cycling and active mobility in general, even other specifics. But our key project right now, which is a somewhat innovative approach to urban mobility, is in Portuguese called a bike train. In other European cities, it's called a cycle train, a bike bus, or a bicibus. And essentially what it is, it's a group of adults that escort children cycling their own bicycles to school in a safety bubble, sort of speaking. And we run it like a bus or a train. So we have a predefined route, and we have stops and schedules, and it goes regularly, usually once a week, and then it depends on the settings. This is something that usually in Europe has been led by parents that set this up. But in Lisbon, we are doing a somewhat innovative approach. We are being hired by the Lisbon municipality to develop and operate this scheme. It makes it so when you don't have a lot of people cycling like we do here, it's just under 1%. It's still possible to have new families and children adopting a very safe way to go to school. And I could actually add on that we've expanded to other Portuguese cities, and hopefully we'll look into spread the word to other European cities as well. So making a connection a bit to the question that you have asked, what can policymakers do to make this better? Well, this is our job. We're very focused, we're mission driven, but we need some financial sustainability. So I think one of the things that we have not been discussing is that public transport is coherently funded by public institutions, including the European Commission, in several levels. But we've not been discussing how to fund walking and cycling as a systematic approach. And I think that's something that we need to start redeveloping. It would be our greatest help. Overall, just a small note that you were talking about intermodality. We need to focus on the user of the experience, of the travel experience, instead of the provider of the transport service. When you're using a car, it's just one thing that you have to focus about. It's your trip, your travel. And a lot of transport service providers, they're focused on their own work, which is standard, but it's important for them to have a holistic approach of how trips are made from start point to end point, which is something that I'm sure we'll be discussing a lot during the rest of this session.
Thank you very much, Luis. And now I would like to welcome Minister Elke van den Brandt from Brussels, who's joined us. Minister, bikes are definitely on the up in Brussels, but I think it's fair to say there are still a few challenges. Many people don't feel quite safe yet, and getting dedicated cycling infrastructure can be challenging in a city with a strong car culture. What are you currently doing as Minister of Mobility, Public Works and Road Safety to address the situation and improve cycling infrastructure?
It is fair to say that we still have a lot of challenges. So Brussels is historically very car oriented, and we're trying to change that. This change is ongoing in Brussels, and it starts, as you say, by infrastructure. If you build cycling lanes, we attract cyclists. It's something that we see on a massive scale. So this last years, we've invested a lot in cycling infrastructure. During COVID, we gave a boost to creating cycling lanes with temporary measurements, and now we made them permanent, and we continue to do so. So we've now added about 70 kilometers on the regional road, and the goal is, of course, to continue this rhythm and to make sure that we have really a cycling network and that you can go safe from one point to another, and that we work on all the difficult points in the network. It is about infrastructure, but it's also about the culture around it. So we noticed that we have a lot of men on the bike and that it's not as much used by women. So we're working on infrastructure. We see also a shift in who is cycling. We have a lot of programs on learning how to cycle in an urban context, because many people don't know how to cycle or are afraid to cycle in an urban context. So we also work on that element on how to cycle, how to maintain a bike, having access to a bike, social leasing program. So we have also, we're also working on the software, not only the hardware of the infrastructure, but we need to do both. One element that also helped a lot is reducing the speed limit. So in Brussels, we're now officially a city of 30. So it's 30 kilometers an hour. That's the default speed instead of 50 kilometers an hour, which make traffic going slower, which has also a positive effect on people walking and cycling, because it creates conditions in which it's nicer to walk or to cycle in a city. Working on road security, as is mentioned before, is crucial. The feeling of security is essential to convince people to walk and to cycle more. So we know where the black spots are in a matter of road security. So we put them away one by one by reorganizing crossroads and dangerous points in our city. And so it's a continuous program. But what's really crucial to say is that we do see the results. So at the moment, we see that we have tripled or about tripled the amount of cyclists in Brussels. We don't come from a lot, but we see that the share of cycling is really booming and increasing in Brussels. We also see that walking is becoming much more popular. So we have more people getting around on foot than by car. So this is new. This is the first time that walking is a first way to get around in the city. Of course, we also invest a lot in public transport, because offering alternatives to the car is also offering public transport. We have a good public transport in Brussels. We added 15% of the offer the last years, and we'll continue to do so. So these are all elements to create a city in which cycling becomes more natural to do, and having this image that Brussels is a way to get around, a city to get around by bike. And please come and test it if you're in the neighborhoods.
Thank you very much, Minister van der Brandt, and for pointing out a few important policy options to feel safer speed limits. Obviously, creating the cycle lanes will attract more people. And thank you as well for pointing to the gendered element of the problem of who is currently occupying the public space, which is extremely important. Now to you, Mr. Broeskma from Groningen, who will finalize this first round on walking and cycling. Groningen is increasingly prioritizing its city center for pedestrians and cyclists. How have you carried out this process, and what advice would you currently give to a larger city like Brussels or Lisbon?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure whether I'm in the position to give advice to larger cities like Brussels or Lisbon. But anyway, back in the 1970s, we introduced the traffic circulation plan in the city of Groningen, in which we separated our inner city into 4 parts, and cars could still go to the city center, but not from one part to another by going to the city center itself. And therefore, walking and cycling and the use of public transport were the means of transport in the city center. But what happened in the beginning, shopkeepers were anxious, but soon after, the city center flourished. And what we noticed that, or what shopkeepers noticed, is that cars do not go to shops, but people do. So when cars are dominant in the city center, it's not that nice to go to shops. People go to shops, not cars. Groningen has grown since then, but the number of inhabitants has grown, and workers and visitors grew. And that means also the city center got busy with pedestrians, but also with bikes and buses and logistic vehicles. Our central square, on average, 600 buses pass through the central square. And that's affected the quality of life and stay in the city center in a negative way. That's why our city council adopted a new city center strategy a few years ago. Predominantly more space for pedestrians, and walking is the most important mode of transport in the city center. Buses were placed out, and they since then stop at the edge of the city center. And so that's what we do. And I'm actually looking out at the central square now. We have placed trees on the central square, so it gave us space to do other things in the central square, the other parts of the city center. What did we learn from it is do things step by step, one step at a time, and do this together with the people involved. And on that part, you have to. Well, if I do have some advice, it would be this: to ask the right question to the right people. If you ask the question, where do you want to park your car? You'll get the answer in front of my house. But if you ask the question, how do you want your street to look like? You get different answers. Then you get answers like trees and greens and playgrounds, etc. And also the non-car owners will answer that question. So ask the right question to the right people, so also to the young people. And the younger generations have less cars, but either they can't afford it or they're not up to it. Groningen is a young city and many people walk or go by bike. And then furthermore, show what the benefits are. So show the shopkeepers that it's nicer for people to go shopping in an area which is not dominated by cars, but is dominated by other pedestrians, by trees, etc. And we notice resistance to the change, and resistance to change is kind of natural. And to put it on the opposite, to look at it from a different perspective, if there is resistance, that means that something is really changing. So resistance as such is not necessarily a negative thing. It means something is changing, and our experience has been that the changes we've made in the end were beneficial for all of them. And once you made a change, and even if there is a resistance, many people are satisfied with the change as is. So that if I have some advice, then this is the advice to Brussels or Lisbon or any other city in Europe. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Broeskma, and bringing in the topic of acceptability and how do you make people accept this change and the importance of having an ongoing conversation with the right people.
Definitely.
So thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of our first round on walking and cycling. And now a very important topic, the accessibility of urban and rural areas. As we've mentioned before, this is key to social inclusion as spatial and economic inequalities are intertwined. And so it's important that suburban youth are included in the discussions on green mobility. So Luis, back to you. One issue that we see in many cities, Lisbon included, is that young people are satisfied with the ways different modes of public transport such as metro tram function, but less so with the reach of these modes of transport. In your experience, what are the challenges you face if you want to travel to the suburbs by public transport in Lisbon?
Well, I can tell you that I can definitely feel when I'm starting to hit the suburbs. Just by looking at the possibilities of getting there. Of course, this has a bit of historical background. So as you are aware, in many other cities, different cities have different public transport systems that are not integrated and not thought of as seamless, which is the most important thing. I think, to be honest, with the Lisbon case, we have to give it some time because we just had a major renovation in terms of the hierarchy of structure. So now we have a metropolitan board for mobility in the past few years, and the work that they have to put in takes some time to take effect. But an example is now all buses are the same, and we have a single app and a single ticketing system for all cities in the metropolitan area instead of the 140 something that used to be there before. So I think it's very important to have this in mind. But then again, we have to think about a bit of what I was talking earlier, which is we have to think about the perspective of someone that starts a trip somewhere and has to end somewhere else, and we have to fulfill everything in between and not just the part that is comfortable for us because it's the line that we set up. So we need to think about first and last mile, in terms of walking and cycling, it's a must. The new bike bus schemes that are being proposed in the different cities, they're not interconnected, they're not coherent. So this would be something very obvious to put in place. And then we have to have some more directional lines that don't take us 3 times as much time and twice as much income to use for public transport. And I also can speak from experience, like Sarah was talking about. I go to the suburbs quite often for visiting family, and it's not often that I don't go during the weekends, because I know that there's not enough public service to. I can go, but I cannot return safely and with some comfort. So this is something that definitely needs to be thought of at the metropolitan level.
Thank you, Luis. Indeed, we've seen from Lisbon in our study that people are most comfortable with their cars, especially suburban youth. And thank you for pointing to the importance of integrating different modes to make sure they work seamlessly. So now to Minister van der Brandt. Another one of our findings from the study is that it is absolutely key that, as I said, the different modes of transport are well integrated and that you're not reliant on only one mode. Brussels, as most people know here, we have a few young people from Brussels in the room, has metro, tram and bus networks. And how are you making sure that they complement each other and that each part of the city is sufficiently serviced by them?
Well, we have bus, tram and metro, and these are in the hands of the region. So it's a regional public transport company, the STIP MIVB. And then we have the train system, which is from the national government. So this system adds to the regional system. We have 35 railway stations also in Brussels. They're not so known and not so used for getting around, although they're very complementary on the regional framework. The main idea behind our system is that on some of the crucial main axes, we have a metro in which we can transport a lot of people in a fast way. Then you have tram lines. They are structuring the network, so they need to go to all the different regions, and then the buses go into all the neighborhoods. So it's like a corporal, your blood system. You have your main artery, and then you have smaller arteries. So the buses need to go in all the neighborhoods. We've invested a lot in increasing the offer. So we have implemented more bus lines, more tram lines. We're creating a metro line, but that's a lot of difficulties because of the impact of the works for the moment. So we are investing in having a better network, but also in having high frequencies also in the evening and the weekends. So we're increasing the frequencies, and also buying new materials so that if you take a bus, if you take a tram, if you take a metro, that you really feel in a luxury environment, that it's a nice thing to do. So you have modern vehicles that are very open, very light, accessible for people in wheelchairs or with strollers. So to make sure that also the material is very apt to get around. We still have some few old vehicles in place, but we're trying to put all the new ones in place. And so this is a very conscious strategic of the region. And we see that within the region, more than half of the people don't own a car. So we see that people in Brussels are really depending on public transport, while in the environments around Brussels, it's about 70 or 80% of the people owns a car. So we really see this difference of people living within our network and people living outside. And one dream I have, if you talk about complementary, so we managed to get a complementary network on bus, tram and metro, but I'm now working to make a cycling offer, making part of the system as well, so that you can rent or use a bike from the public company, and it enters in the same system, that it's also part of the public transport. We have a lot of shared bike systems in Brussels, but to make sure that they're integrated in the public transport is, for me, the next step I would like to put in place as well.
Thank you very much. Mr. Broeskma, in comparison to Lisbon or Brussels, Groningen is mostly focuses on buses in terms of public transport. And how can we make sure that smaller towns around Groningen remain connected, as we have been mentioning?
Yeah, thank you for that question. We do have a train system connecting a few villages around, but we mainly depend, it's true, on a bus network. We do not have a tram system. We have a combination of different type of Kilanes, like Elke said as well, direct and fast high-frequency buses between the larger villages and cities and the city of Groningen, according to this bus rapid transit system. Which is, well, it's not really a tram, but it's comparable. It's a tram on rubber, so to speak, a tram on rubber wheels. We also have buses that are fast buses between the city of Groningen and large commuting areas in the nearby environment. And there's the regional buses between the villages and within the city of Groningen. It is it's a system which is vulnerable for the very small villages. It is difficult to keep that, but as we connect these buses also with shared mobility, so it is possible to have scooters which you can rent, and we demand the scooter companies that they also be available in the villages around the city. So we demand them, so you can only operate scooters if you also have scooters placed in the smaller villages around Groningen, such that there is mobility, be it now buses or train. So in that sense of public transport, but there is a mode of transport. You do not have to own a car to also get to the city center of Groningen, to the jobs or to the factory that you work. So we have it organized in the sense of hubs, and so travelers can go to these hubs, and then they can travel further with another form of transport, such as those scooters or a shared bicycle. Furthermore, and if that all does not work, we have a taxi system, which we call a hub taxi system. So you cannot go from door to door, any door to any door, but you can go from your home door to the front door of your house to a hub, so be it a train station or a bigger bus station. So this taxi system also is, for us, this is cheaper than to have buses driving, which are almost empty. So we have actually a taxi as being a form of a small bus, a small public system, and that helps when the cycling distance is too long. So we have this chained mobility. So you start with a car, or you start walking, you start with a bus, you go to a hub, and then you're eligible to move on to your final destination, be it with a bike, be it with other modes of transport. And so we have these hubs on the park and ride system. So the park and ride system, there we have buses to the city center every few minutes. So they're not scheduled, so you just wait, and every few minutes there will be a bus, like a metro system. So then you can go the last mile with the bus, which is helped by the fact that we have paid parking. So you have to pay a parking fee for cars throughout the city. So parking your car within the city center or in the outskirts, it will cost you. So if you park your car on this park and ride system, it's for free. You can take the bus or take your own folded bicycle for the last mile. And so we have this combination of systems which happen to work. So on a daily basis, we have every day the number of inhabitants of a city doubles because of the commuters getting into the city. So from 200,000, it adds up to 400,000. So if they all come by car, it's simply not possible. Car owners know that, so they come by bus, train, or by bike. So that's what it's a combination of systems which work, and actually we have the technology, or working on the technology on. Everyone has a mobile phone, so everyone can download an app to see whether to make a reservation for a bike, to make a reservation for a scooter, and to make a reservation for a parking place. So the technology is on our side to make this interconnection between different modes of transport work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Broeskma, and reminding us of the importance of getting the last mile rights. And also, we haven't spoken much about technology yet, but indeed there are a lot of options. And Luis was saying earlier of the importance of having an integrated ticketing system in terms of the experience of consumers and travelers. So thank you very much for this. And we are actually going to our last round. We are exactly on time, so thank you for keeping to the 2.5 minutes. And our last round, which is extremely important, is the pricing of public transport, which is directly linked with the issues of affordability. So back to you, Juan. Our study has shown that there are quite significant differences between cities in terms of ticket prices. Some have extensive discounts for young people, for everyone, others much less so. In your opinion, how important do you think that pricing is in terms of the attractiveness of public transport network for young people?
Yeah, in my opinion, very important, but I will develop further the answer. It's important to talk about public transport. It has been mentioned in the panel discussion. We started talking about walking and cycling, but let's say the sentence as such, building on the example that Minister Elke van der Brandt gave on the arteries in the network. Public transport is a sentence that we said a lot, is the backbone of any any transport system in every city. And why it is important, the first issue. I mean, we have seen different experiences of even free public transport for everyone. I think I remember one of the first ones, if not the first city in Europe, was Tallinn, that pretended to extend it to the whole country. I think in some cities in France, they also did some tries. I think also Luxembourg as well did it recently. I mean, I'm mentioning this because there's a controversy, there's an open debate about is the public transport aimed to be for free, or still it's more realistic and fair to the whole society to pay for public transport, even though we use the word public, and in some minds public means free, but it's not that. It's paid in a way, it's paid with your taxes or with a direct ticket. From a personal point of view, I don't mind. For example, some people could say, oh, but you know, a single ticket is quite expensive. I don't mind to pay an expensive ticket if I know that the same company, the same public transport system is given opportunities free tickets or really low fares to those that need it the most. In a way, I'm contributing because I'm a young adult, I have my salary, I can do it. So it's my social responsibility. But because I also know that not everyone thinks like me, and also some people we said before that we are not, some people in the panel, we are not young anymore. So I know people 30 and 40 like me that they don't think they should pay for, or they should compensate the extra offers that young people should have. I think it's also important to know why it's important, not how important it is, but why it is important that young people have low fares to access public transport, is to create the culture. And I really enjoy, I was surprised, I don't know, I did a lot of train trips last year because I privileged a train over the flight. In one of those, I saw a lot of young people in the train with me, and I said, probably most of these people have a discount, but honestly, I don't mind to pay the full price, and because they are creating the culture. They are something that maybe I didn't have when I was younger. They can experience in firsthand what public transport is, as Minister mentioned, nice public transport. I mean, a good experience in good vehicles, and then continue that trend when they are young adults. I don't want to be much more. I think I'm using the counter. It's already 3 minutes, but I also like to quickly mention that last year, by the end of last year, I had a meeting with the European Youth Car Association. So we have a joint effort also to see how not only cities, not only public transport providers, but also all the organizations, not necessarily transport related, can offer these discounts to public transport to young people. So in a nutshell, this is more or less how important it is and why it is important to offer affordable tickets to young people for public transport.
Thank you very much, Juan, and mentioning also the importance of progressive pricing and how that fits into larger social and intergenerational justice. Back to you, Minister van der Brandt. Brussels has discounts for public transport for young users and students. And how are you managing that, given that your public transport system is already heavily used on many lines?
So we do have reductions. So until the age of 25, you pay 12 euros for a yearly subscription. This is €1 per month. So it's nearly for free. So you can have access to public transport in Brussels if you're young for a very, very cheap price. The same if you're over 65. The idea behind it was that we want to get young people to get good habits, and that's until the age of 25 that they get so used to public transport that they don't need to buy a car afterwards. So to create these good habits when they're young. We do see, because it's now 2 years in place, and we do see that it has boosted the number of young people having a subscription to public transport. So the number has increased. It's very difficult to see what it has done on the amount of use, because we were coming out of a COVID period where public transport was a little bit down. And so we do see that there is an increase in public transport, but it's difficult to really measure the impact of it. We get a lot of positive reactions, especially from parents with multiple children in a household for whom this pricing is very important to reduce the cost of living in a family. It also, that's the backside, it has a price tag for the government. It's not somebody needs to pay, of course, all the buses. And so it means that we're compensating from the government the loss of income to the public transport company. So it is costing the region. So we will need to evaluate this in time, but so far we're quite positive, and it's more positive even than we thought in advance, the impact on the sales of those subscriptions. And it also gives a good boost to young people to say, okay, get around in Brussels, move around, feel free to go anywhere, don't stay in your own neighborhood, or don't just stroll around university, really discover the city, which is also important because we really want people to enjoy Brussels all over the city.
Thank you very much. And also you added on what Juan said about creating the culture and how important that is for young people. So it becomes a lifelong habit, and they can become this sort of imaginary of what a future as also an older adult looks like in public transport. So thank you for this. And last but not least, Mr. Broeskma, public transport pricing in the Netherlands can be subject to some more controversy, because Dutch students can benefit from free travel during weeks or weekends. But this is very difficult for students from abroad, for international students who can very rarely benefit from this free travel. Do you think that there should be discounts in place which apply universally to all students, regardless of nationality or age?
Yeah, thank you. Public transport in the Netherlands for international students, it is relatively expensive. Unfortunately, I don't think this can be solved on a local level, on a city level, but should be solved on a national level, maybe European level, I don't know. But I think the national government should take a step in this direction in collaboration with universities and schools. In Groningen, we do focus on the things that we can do to improve accessibility for international students. The bicycle is an important means of transport, and in collaboration with educational institutions, students are encouraged to take the bicycle, and we pay special attention to international students who sometimes only stay here for half a year or sometimes longer. But even for the short amount of time, we have solutions for biking. As to free tickets, as Elke van der Brandt just mentioned, free public transport does not exist. So if the traveler does not pay for it, someone else has to pay for it. And considering free tickets, it's something about money, it's something about income, about the financial means people have. So rather than a generic rule for age or a type of person, like being a student or anything else, would say that you would have discount for poor people, because you don't want their their lack of money be the reason that they cannot participate in society. So if anything, we don't have it yet. We're considering it, free tickets or discount on tickets for the poorer people, such that they can stay participating in society. And maybe as public transport is too expensive, maybe the other side of the medal is that car driving may be too cheap. Cars take up a lot of space that we need for something else, for climate adaptation, for instance, trees and greens and everything else. Cars ruin our climate, they poison us with their pollution. So there are many reasons why cars have disadvantages. They have only one advantage, which is their luxury. And so it's luxury to drive a car and get you from door to door. But maybe car driving is too cheap. And so we look at the entire system of mobility and looking at space, for instance, buses, public transport, bikes, and walking have a big advantage. And the problems like traffic jams are not caused by buses or by bikes, are caused by cars. So cars are on the side of the problem predominantly. Buses and bikes are at the side of the solution. So we want to facilitate bikes and public transport and walking, and discourage car driving. And for as to maybe a financial detail that may be of interesting is, we have in the city center of Groningen, we have so many bikes that parking with the bikes on the streets, it has become a problem. So we have parking garages for bikes only, especially for bikes, and they're funded by the parking fees for cars. So the car owners pay for the parking garages for bikes, and we like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for finishing this last round of questions and for pointing out indeed that transport policy and pricing policy must go hand in hand with urban planning, that it's important to look at the overall cost of having cars take up so much public space. And I would really like to thank you all to all the panelists for your insightful comments and your active participation. And just before we give the floor to our audience so they can have a dialogue with our panelists, I would just like to ask you to respond to the following question in under 30 seconds if possible. What top policy could help young people consistently choose sustainable modes of transportation over private car usage? We can start with Mr. Broeskma.
I think using a car for young people is mostly associated with owning a car. And I think we have a shared mobility policy on shared bikes, shared scooters, shared cars. The policies to facilitate shared mobility, to facilitate this chain of mobility modes, to make the switch. And I think young people are very prone to that, to not own a car, to not own their mobility means, but to use it when to have access to it whenever they need it. So shared mobility could definitely help. And yeah, so facilitate public transport, facilitate biking, and discourage car ownership.
Thank you very much. So the key word is sharing. Now, Minister van Brandt, what would be your top policy for young people and sustainable transport?
Sharing, of course, is one thing, but also making sure that the alternatives are the default modes. People are always looking for habits, for routines. And so making sure that you don't need to think when you want to get around in a city, so that the bus stop is nearby, that the bus is coming every 5 or 10 minutes, that you don't need to plan, that everything is easy. So making sure that those way of getting around that we prefer people to use are the easiest way and the cheapest way to get around, and that it's more attractive to do so. A city that has trees, benches, playgrounds, large sidewalks, is a city that will invite to walk. So making sure that you organize your city for the way you want to people to use it, especially young people. They need to discover the city, they need to go out, they need to have public space. And so organizing our public space in a good way is the start of everything.
Thank you very much. Luis, to you.
Right. I'll answer with the least discussed, most important answer that I have to your question, which is focusing on green jobs for urban clean mobility. So we need to have young people working on these topics, having them heavily focused on what alternatives need to be sought. And if we have people doing this sort of businesses and work, then our solutions are always going to be focused on their own specific needs. So I think it's the most important topic that I don't see very much discussed.
Thank you very much, pointing to the importance of the green skills for the transition. And finally, Juan, the top policy.
Yes, rather than to give a concrete top policy, I would like to, in 30 seconds, give you three guidelines. I mean, any top policy should be those breaking stereotypes. For example, when we take into account young people, let's keep in mind that there is diversity within diversity. We shouldn't treat young people as a block, as well as we don't do it with women or with any other part of the society. So there is diversity within the diversity, although they are common needs. Also, in the fight of changing views and stereotypes, I hope that the young generations, they don't commit the same mistake as so many people have done in the past. I always give this example. The movement or the traffic flow, the traffic flow of cars within cities is not the course of a river. It's not something natural. It was something that was decided decades ago. It was a political decision. So we can do a change, and it should be as well as natural as we think that today is taking the car. So that's what Minister said. Let's make the alternatives the normal, the default, actually, today's alternatives. And in a bit of science fiction or technology fiction, we were talking about public transport before, and we are, of course, trying to find the solutions and how to encourage people and to give visibility to sustainable mode of transport within the current format of public transport or walking and cycling. But we can see in the last 10, 20 years, many new forms of mobility that we could never imagine. I always tend to say 10, 15 years ago, we used this for to give calls or receive a call. Today, we use it for anything else apart from actually give a call. So anything can happen with public transport. Maybe in the future, it will be something in between share rides and the actual fixed line. So we don't know how flexible or what the futures has for us in terms of public transport or urban mobility in general. So we also have to be open to disruptive technologies in any new policy.
Thank you, Juan, for these conclusion and the final remarks. I will give the floor now to Anna, who will be asking our very first question from the audience.
Hi, everyone. I'm from GCE, and I think it's really interesting to hear how everything could actually be different. And we just heard a bit about technologies, and I wanted to know what you see the role of emerging technologies such as ride-sharing services, electric scooters, etc. What role they will play in improving the mobility options for young people in European cities, and how can we ensure that they are inclusive and sustainable?
Thank you, Anna. I'll let any of you respond with initial thoughts.
Well, I'm not the public transport expert, but I'll give it a go for an initial statement. So the first thing is information is key. you were talking about how technology can involve us. If we know how to get from A to B at the click of a button, and every solution is there, then it's what we need to make sure that it's an easy solution to use. So we need to have all bus systems in Google Maps and Citymap or whatever. This is something that when it exists, it will be absolutely groundbreaking, because we will start using long, medium and long distance transportation as fast as we do for just a Uber ride home. So if we do it seamless, I think we're gonna have a very, very big transition.
Maybe Morgan, if I can add to that.
Absolutely, go ahead.
What I mentioned earlier is like technology is on our side. So technology makes it possible for us to enforce or to facilitate different modes of transport. For instance, what we're doing here in Groningen is we have intelligent traffic lights, and they, as everyone on a bicycle, almost everyone will have a smartphone. If you have the right apps installed, the traffic light will recognize you as a bicycle owner biking, and we can have the traffic light respond to that, so that a group of bikers or one single person on a bicycle will have priority on the traffic lights. It can be arranged, and the technology is there. You can also have the maximum speed enforced onto cars. So you say this is a 30-kilometer street, then you can enforce that such that it is safer and easier to walk and to ride your bike in such a street. So technology, there's also kinds of apps possible in which you can have your chain mobility. So you start walking, and then you start with your bike, with your bus, with your speed pedelec, with your scooter, anything that you want. You can have it organized in a proper way. So technology is on our side, and as we know that young people are more inclined to use new technology, are willing to use new technology, they can benefit from it easy. So if there's a group of school pupils having the right app, they will have green traffic lights throughout that trip, and the cars will have to wait. So technically it's possible. We're implementing that in Groningen so that bikes have a priority over at the traffic lights, in our intelligent traffic lights, as they're called. So technology is on our side.
Thank you. And Minister van der Brandt, to build on that, technology is on our side.
It's on our side, but it's so we have advanced with it. The example of traffic lights has been given, and how you can play with it. There's also in Brussels, we have now Floya, which is an application that is organizing mobility around a person. So you can, it's still in the beginning phase, but you can say, I want to go from A to B, and then it tells you all the options, and you can pay within the app, and you don't need to open 7 other applications to use it. So that's one of the elements in which technology is helping us. On the other hand, it's been said, I think 2 times now, that everybody has a mobile phone. That's not true. Especially in Brussels, we have a large number of people who don't have access to this digital world. And so keeping in mind that as well, that you still have a part of your population that really is depending on oral information or on human contact to get around I think is crucial to put in our mindset. And perhaps also saying that sometimes we have technology that we're not using. Giving one example, I have an electrical bike, and if I go faster than 25, the motor blocks and I can't go faster unless I push hard. Our cars have the same technology. We could say that in an urban context, we limit cars at 100 an hour, and so we limit speeding within at 50 an hour, but somehow the car lobby manages to avoid that this technology is being used in that purpose. So I think also using the existing technology might even save lives if we really push forward. So yes, technology can help us, but also be aware that not everybody has the same access to technology, and that we cannot make people dependent on it as a whole.
Thank you very much. Juan.
Yeah, I would like to conclude on this question. I agree with everything has been said, but I would like to say one sentence. The more technological a society is, the more human perspective we need to add to our policies, or more human side we need to add to the debate. And this is why at Eurocities we are present in many European projects. We haven't, for example, mentioned air urban mobility. I mean, there is nowadays a debate between what will be developed first: vehicles without a driver that already exist in many cities, or we will see in our streets cars without a driver, or cars flying. Actually, the two technologies are developed at different levels. But in any case, it's important that from the very first step, from the development of these pilots, the voice of cities and citizens is heard, because technology could allow for many things in the future, but we shouldn't forget the human perspective and the final aim of all these policies, which is the quality of life of people living in cities and in rural areas, and how to interconnect them. So that's why I would like to mention that, that's one of the things that we do at Eurocities. Especially my work is on the most human aspect of the urban mobility. Let's not constrain the debate about the existing technologies or the technical possibilities, but also why we do this, and for which purpose we do this. And it's here where the human perspective is absolutely needed, and I think young people can also add this to the debate.
Thank you. So in your opinion, keeping humans at the center of policy and technology, whatever they are. Thank you very much. I will just read out the question from Agatha in the chat. How can we ensure that approach to transport and mobility policy also recognizes the importance of interlinkages with other types of policy, such as national and local? For example, in Brussels, there are a lot of tax breaks for companies for cars, which significantly raises their popularity as a job benefit, even for entry-level roles. Let's keep the responses kind of short as we're approaching the end of the event.
I will tackle that one because it's a typical Belgium system. I can be very short about it. We need to stop that system. So in Brussels, when you are hiring somebody and you're paying them by car, so you're offering a car, you pay fewer taxes than you pay the same amount in euros. So having a system in which we pay people by euros instead of by car would be a very logical way. So I hope my country, it's not on a regional level. I'm a regional minister, so it's the national level. I hope quickly we'll do so, because we're actually putting 4 billion euros a year in this system. It's subsidizing traffic jams, subsidizing air pollution. So many people do want to cycle to work, but if you have a free car, you can park for free and you can buy your gas for free, well, then it's really becoming too attractive to use this car. So ending that system for me is the only rational thing to do.
Thank you very much. Any other remarks about tax breaks for cars and these sort of policies from other speakers?
Yeah, sorry to cut you off. Just like to add that we've come to the point that we are at because of these systems, as was mentioned earlier. If we want to move to another one, we can do exactly the same. So let's stop having the tax benefits for cars and start having the tax benefits for things that are useful for society in terms of mobility. A lot of examples could be given, but namely walking and cycling to work. So this would be a no-brainer.
Now, for me, not much to add to Elke's story. So we're dependent on a national level on the measures on the tax benefits that are for car owners. I can do what is in my reach of power, which are parking fees, for instance, and support public transport and biking and walking, and discourage the cars. I can do that, and I have to move on, and I'm doing that, and I hope that on the national level similar things will happen. It's not always the case, but I can do what I can, and use the powers that I have on a local level as much as I can.
Yeah, nothing to add from my side. I think we can go to the next question. We're running out of time, and we still have questions. So Morgan, you can.
Yes, absolutely. Question from Salome Dermati in the chat. Thank you for your insightful contributions and the presentation of the report. Regarding your findings, you mentioned great disparities of results between cities on topics such as satisfaction with rates, prices, discounts? Did you identify perhaps any regional trends, at least say in Central Europe versus the Mediterranean, or in small cities versus the capital? Gemma, would you like to take on this question, or otherwise we can direct the audience to our report?
I can perhaps jump in as well on that question. Gemma, do you want to answer, or should I go ahead?
Oh, I can just say, yeah, sorry, I was like struggling to find the mute button.
No, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, actually, I think from our report, surprisingly, we came up like it was very diverse, even between regions. Like we couldn't say the Eastern European has like terrible cycling, or Western European has better cycling, stuff like that, because there's such a wide variety. Like if you look at some of the more expensive cities, for example, Dublin also had like one of the highest car usages, even though it's like Western Europe. So yeah, quite a mix of range. And Budapest, of course, as we discussed earlier, is like it's been a great example of active transport. So it really varies, I think. Ruben, did you want to add anything?
No, yeah, I fully agree with that. I'd basically say that if anything, the findings kind of point towards the opposite. Like we see that the cities which score well are, for example, Groningen in the west, but also Budapest, like Juan already touched upon that they won the awards, they scored generally very well, and that's further east. So I think if anything, the findings suggest that any city, regardless of size and geographical location, can do well in terms of catering to the needs of young Europeans in terms of mobility. And it's generally a question of a combination of local and regional and national policy. I think geographical location doesn't really rule any city out of achieving things.
Thank you, Gemma and Ruben, for these details on our report findings. We're coming to the end of the event, and I would really like to thank all of our brilliant speakers for their active participation, and of course, our audience for joining us here today. Don't forget to read the reports in detail, and please do get back to us with any comments, feedback. We would love to hear all of your thoughts. You can also follow us on social media to check all the advocacy that we do on transport, as well as other topics such as energy and biodiversity in the lead up to the European elections and also throughout 2025. Thank you all for your great participation. It was an honor to moderate here.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Everyone.